Without the Bank podcast, where you and I are going to talk about all things IBC, the business of banking, utilizing money correctly, and how this will help you grow your business and your wealth. Okay, folks, let's get into it. Today, we are going to go back to becoming your own banker, and we are going to go over another chapter. Well, we're actually going to hit two this week. One is the chapter of imagination and the grocery store. Because imagination is a little bit short, I'm sure I could find all kinds of stuff to blabber about on there. However, that chapter is a little bit short. It's about a page and a half, or it's not even, it's about 3/4 of a page. And so I'm sure I will have time to cover both chapters. However, if you have not gotten the book, Becoming Your Own Banker, put that on your order list and get Life Without the Bank as well. So if you've not gotten Life Without the Bank, go to withoutthebank.com, grab the Life Without the Bank book, and then you can, if you go to the store, you can get Becoming Your Own Banker and Life Without the Bank as a bundle. So you may want to do that. I highly suggest it. Okay, let's talk about imagination. First of all, let's go over the quote that Nelson says in his book. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Albert Einstein said that. This is very true. I just met with a prospective client today, and he said, I love roadblocks because I just figure ways to get around them. And here was my comment, which sometimes I say things without even thinking, and sometimes it's something good. And I said, a roadblock can be a roadblock and it can be a problem, or it can pose an opportunity. And for people that are always looking for solutions, it's an opportunity. For some people, it's literally a roadblock and it's going to stop them. And they're going to say, you know what? I don't know what to do. I can't move forward because why? We're asking all the wrong questions. And so the infinite banking concept, as Nelson has always said, is an exercise in imagination, reason, logic, and prophecy. And a lot of people are not super familiar with the prophecy part of what Nelson says, because a lot of agents will say, well, it's imagination, reason, and logic. And I do the same, and I leave the prophecy side of it out. But really, when we look at the fact that we are not going to the government, we are taking care of ourselves, we are leaving an inheritance, that I do believe is what Nelson was talking about. But we have to have some imagination. Reason and logic are the biggest things here. And most people are missing those three things. If we can't be told and shown exactly what we can do with the infinite banking concept, we can't even fathom it. We just can't do it. And we have no imagination of, well, what can we do with that money? I've got a bunch of cash value. I don't know what to do with it. What is the rate of return? We cannot use our imagination to say, you know what, this rate of return is going to be created outside the policy because we have access to our money right now to use. That's not something that we think, because our imagination has been taken away from us. And I am somewhat of a fairly firm believer in the aspect that we tell our kids, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. And then they get to school and they're told, no, you can't do that. You get to a job. No, you can't do that. So eventually you just go, yeah, I can't. And you quit using your imagination. Now, things are constantly invented. We are not even close to using our imagination and being to an end at creating solutions to problems, right? But we have to use some imagination. We need to use some reason and some logic when we look at what we are doing here. And we can't just go based off of what somebody says. I had talked to somebody else this week that said, it's funny. I read the book and then I try to tell these people, my friends about the book, and they tell me, oh, there's got to be a catch. There's got to be a catch. There is no catch. It is what it is. But if we can't use our reasoning, we can't logically think about something, automatically, what? We go to, oh, there's got to be a catch. No, we have to stop and go back to get all the noise out of our heads that has been planted there for so many years and really think about what Nelson is talking about in his book. Really think about what I'm saying in my book and look at the infinite banking concept through eyes without the preconceived notions of everything. Because Nelson says in this chapter too, he gives an example of changing the pi, the formula pi, from 3.1416 to 3 because it would be too complicated and cumbersome. And he uses an analogy to talk about the fact that there is a fixed relationship for pi and that they could not change it because the answers wouldn't come out correctly. And in here, he's just alluding to the fact that life insurance has been around forever. Nobody's changed how cash value grows. Nobody has changed how cash value is borrowed against. This is not new. This has been going on for 100+ years, yet everybody thinks it's new. Everybody thinks it's this grand scheme that life insurance companies are putting together. And that is absolutely not the case. It has been there forever. We just didn't know about it. We have now just gotten to the point where we're a little bit enlightened. And so just because it's new to us does not mean that it's new. It's been there. We just didn't know that it was there. So if you're asking, well, how come I didn't know about that? There's got to be a catch. There's not a catch. Well, what am I going to use it for? I don't own a business. I don't owe any money on anything. I pay cash for everything. I do own a business and in order to operate my business, I use cash. I don't need this. Then you aren't using your imagination, right? You're not looking long-term at everything. And so I think that this is a much bigger issue, lack of issue, than what most people give it credit for. Okay, the next chapter is the grocery store. And I particularly like this chapter. A lot of people, you'll hear me say sometimes don't steal the peas. But Nelson talks about in this chapter that when you are getting into a business in which you are both the consumer and the seller of the same thing, a very significant reason for this exercise. And he goes on in his exercise to talk about if you are the owner of a grocery store, you can put peas on the shelf, but you have to sell so many cans of peas to turn a profit. And he is saying you need to turn that inventory 15 times to break even. So you need to sell 15 cans of peas in order to break even. But what happens if you, the grocery store owner, walks out the back door with a can of peas that you did not pay for? You had to sell a can. You had to sell 15 of them to break even. But as the owner, you take it off the shelf. You just stole from your own business. Now you're going to have to sell more than 15 cans to break even. Why are you stealing from yourself? And then what happens is your employees say, you know what? The owner took a can of peas, so I'm going to take a can of peas too. No big deal. We'll just all go out the back door and we won't pay for our stuff. Well, now you got 4 or 5 employees not paying for their stuff. Think about your employees. If you're a business owner, think about your employees that steal pens and sticky notes and, notebooks and whatever they're taking, because it's no big deal. It is a big deal. They're stealing. You now have to sell more product to pay for those things. Well, what do we do with our money? We take it from savings and we never put it back. Now, we have to work twice as hard to get money into savings because we didn't even replenish what we took the first time. We always like to say, don't steal the peas. Make sure that you are paying yourself back. And this is the biggest thing that the talking heads like to say. Well, go ahead and use cash. Well, that's great. You used cash and you have a vehicle paid for, but you have nothing in savings again because you didn't replenish it, much less at 0%, but plus interest. Make sure that you're putting interest back in. Don't steal the peas. I talked to somebody a couple weeks ago and they had borrowed money from their parents. And their parents are terrible bankers. They're charging 0% interest. They're like, yeah, whenever you get it paid back. That's not being nice. In my opinion, that's not being nice. That's being a terrible banker. Why would you give somebody 0% interest? You could have made more than that sitting in a savings account. Charge them interest. What does it matter if you lend money to a family member and charge them interest? If they're part of your estate, they're going to eventually get it all back, right? Next time they want to borrow money, there will be more there to borrow from because they paid interest. Don't steal the peas and don't give the peas away. Your money is sitting on a shelf. And if you're not using it to create more cash flow, then you're not doing it any good. It's just sitting there. That money should be used to create cash flow, because the more money that you use to create cash flow, the more cash flow that comes in, right? But if you're going to use cash, you need to pay yourself interest because you should not be stealing the peas. And I talk about this in Life Without the Bank too, that you have to be an honest banker. How many of you are so happy that you don't have any debt? Kudos to you. Do you have cash flow? And I know we've talked about this and I just keep beating this dead horse, but it's very important. If you're going to lend money to somebody, if you're going to have money and you are the bank, you better treat it like the bank. You better act like that is your grocery store and you are not walking out the back door with your peas. Treat them as if they have value. And if you are doing this and your kids are watching you, they're going to do the exact same thing. They're going to use the cash. They're not going to pay it back plus interest. They are also going to lend money at 0% to be nice, and they are going to have their peas stolen, or they're going to steal their own peas. No different than an employee who says, oh, look at there. The boss takes an hour and a half lunch. I can take an hour and a half lunch. Same thing with your kids. We need to change this cycle. We need to make sure that we're teaching them what we know in a different way so that they can get ahead and they don't get stuck in the same rut that we're all in. Because when they go to school, when they turn on the TV, when they see podcasts, when they're on their social media, they're going to see the talking heads saying, you pay cash for everything. When in fact, cash is not king. Okay, those were two very short chapters, but two important chapters. Everything in this book is important. You can't miss anything because there is always, Nelson is telling stories, but there's a meaning behind these stories. And that is why I am doing these podcasts, to just kind of review everything. Because if we don't have imagination, we don't know what he's talking about, right? And so I'm just helping your imagination get going so that you have the ability to understand exactly what his point is here. Okay, that is all I have out of today's podcast. So as usual, if you have not gotten Life Without the Bank, please do. If you have not left a review of my podcast, please do. I would appreciate that as well. And because this podcast is still new, a lot of you are maybe hungry for more information. Just go over to Farming Without the Bank. Listen to that podcast. There are over 100 episodes. Yes, they are farming related, but that does not mean that you will not get lots of good information out of them. So you can go over there as well. Listen to those if you are just craving tons and tons of more information, which I know a lot of you are binge listeners when you first find this. So that is exciting. Welcome and thank you for listening to me nonstop. But if you have not gotten the books, go to withoutthebank.com, do that, leave a review on the podcast, and email me, maryjo@withoutthebank. If you have questions, I am happy to answer. All right, y'all, you have a fantastic rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next week.